Welcome everyone to our last panel, a very good panel. We have a lot of distinguished guests here. I want to introduce you to George Dabaghi, who's the head of TV and media at Ericsson Middle East, and he's going to be the moderator for the Content and Mobility panel. I'm going to let George introduce all the panelists here.
So, good evening. We saved the best for last. This panel is going to be on mobility, changing the concepts of media and broadcast. And allow me to welcome our distinguished panelists today. I'll start from my left all the way down. Mr. Tony Wong is the Director of Business Consulting at Huawei. Mr. Ben Kinealy is CEO of Intigral. Mr. Sami Boustany, CEO of Yahlive. Mr. Karim Khazen, VP at Deutsche Telecom. I'm going to skip the best for last, if I may. We have also Mr. Samer Geissah, the VP of Innovation at Do. And last but not least, our very distinguished guest today is Dr. Bassem Youssef, who's a very pleasant surprise to our panel today, and hopefully we can gain from him some insights on content fueling the the networks of tomorrow. He had a very nice experience recently in Egypt, and we'll hear from him his thoughts and ideas. Allow me first to just quickly go through some of the changes that we've been seeing recently in content and media. I'm quoting from the last consumer report of Ericsson for consumption habits, and this is global. We've seen 6 hours per week of streamed video, a rise from probably half that number in 2012. We're seeing the millennials, and I believe an earlier gentleman spoke about 65% of their time on watching video is on smartphones and tablets. We're probably seeing a similar number, 53%. Mobile data is growing at a very large rate, 14 times between now and 2021. And a big percentage of that, probably somewhere in the vicinity of 70%, is coming from video, which is growing at 55% year on year until the same period, 2020 or 2021. So with that seen, I thought we'll ask our distinguished panel today what the views are from the operator's perspective, from the broadcasters as well, and maybe we can check also with vendors and with content specialists basically what their views are for the future. I can start from Samer. I believe if you can shed some light, please, about what is causing this content explosion and how are you handling it at Do potentially, and what do you see as opportunities there?
Thank you, George. Obviously, statistics show a huge increase in the consumption of data. When we dig deeper into our data analytics, we find that video is on the top of this pyramid. In fact, the consumption of video has been increasing exponentially in the past few years, and with the huge increase in the number of smartphones and the user-generated content, we are now seeing a huge uptake not only of download but also uploading. Mm-hmm. So it used to be that the ratio is 80-20. Nowadays, some applications like Instagram, some peer-to-peer applications are causing increase also in the upload. Mm-hmm. So obviously, the premium content in the traditional sense of consumption, such as video on demand, etc., still remains, on the fixed networks, the highest also in consumption. Peer-to-peer is also taking up a lot of traffic, but the most aggressive now is also YouTube, for example. Mm-hmm. YouTube has the highest usage in the Middle East, specifically Saudi Arabia. I think the highest in the world, mm-hmm. Followed closely by the UAE. We're also playing, some of the the major factors we're trying to monetize is obviously we don't want to spend a lot of money, and we have great networks, great pipes, very smart pipes, but we're not monetizing a lot of the data that goes on those pipes, and we spend year on year a lot of budgets to increase them, make sure that they're well maintained, but somebody else is making all the revenue side of it.
Of course. Ben, I guess to complement the picture from the operators, how do you see the mobility basically driving this content further and changing the way that operators have, traditionally operators did not address content services or media services. So how do you foresee these changes affecting your networks and services?
Well, I think in Saudi there's been a massive increase in mobile data usage as well as fixed, but I think it was announced the other day that it was up to 500% increase in 1 year, which was, how do you keep up with that? I think a lot of that's driven by, obviously, the price of mobile broadband is very cheap in Saudi compared to the other territories around this region. And of course, the amount of content that's coming on there is no longer just the amateur stuff. Now, with the influx of video on demand available in all types of places, be that legal or illegal, that is obviously driving a lot of this. But I think what's going to really drive this further is going to be internet television, meaning linear television coming online as well. And that's just going to go through the roof. So I think the point which was said before in regards to how you actually manage that unmanaged data is going to be a crucial part of telcos keeping their costs down while other people are making money off their networks. So I think that's going to have to be handled in a much more aggressive way than it is at the moment. And I think the telcos, it's in their best interest if they have great content services that compete for the customer's viewing time, as well as partner with others and manage that particular data accordingly. And hopefully, if they can clip the ticket along the way, they can also make new revenue.
Do you see content rights, for example, in what direction would you like it to change to help you with that enablement?
Well, I think content rights are probably going to be the big change to this. So at the moment, most of the linear TV channels, as well as TV programs, are tied up by pay TV companies and free-to-air companies who might or might not have the rights to deliver over IP. That's all about to change. And what's going to happen, particularly with people like Amazon and Apple, as you're probably aware, they are trying to change the rights of the American pay TV bundle to go down from like a $100 bundle with all these channels that you don't need to a $30 bundle where you just get 10 channels or 20 channels of the things that you really want. Now, there's obviously a lot of people who are going to lose if that happens, but that inevitably will happen because the amount of theft, the amount of breakdown of the linear channel compared to VOD is going to force people to be able to accept internet delivery to OTT players. And that's going to happen in the States. It's already happening around the world to a degree, but if it happens in the States with those big guys, then that's just going to hit internet traffic across the world, be that legal or illegal. It's just going to start happening because more people are going to be aware of it. The devices are going to enable it. The devices you trust are going to have it as part of their app structure. And that is going to make the internet traffic for telcos explode. So I would say the best thing to do is to really understand how to handle video, how to partner with the right people, and how to make sure that the customers are looking at your managed data, not your unmanaged data.
Okay, thank you. Moving to Mr. Boustany, your thoughts. I mean, you're probably you're a traditional broadcaster in the full sense of the word, but I believe you're looking at novel models also for business, and you're seeing all this affecting in one way or another your services. Do you see this as complementary, helping basically, or is this something that is a threat to your traditional business? And what forms of innovations do you foresee in the near future to handle this?
Yeah, thank you, George. I think traditionally satellite has been seen as a, as if you want, an incubator of mobility in the 80s and 90s. So the industry, if you want, has been a bit lagging in terms of catching up with terrestrial technology. And naturally, it's very difficult from space because of these signal weaknesses, etc. So devices need to be bigger and more sophisticated. So in that sense, terrestrial has definitely a more efficient way.
Okay.
But what helps from a satellite perspective is the coverage itself. So it's pretty much ubiquitous. And it covers a huge area, and it requires much less capex for a specific area. Now, yes, I think all industries are struggling with mobility. I think we've created a beast. Initially, it was technology, it was us, it was the industry that used to drive demand, and now it's the public that we ended up serving that is basically dictating what we need to do, how fast we need to adapt. And our attention, I guess the people's attention spans, especially you see it with our kids, is getting shorter and shorter in terms of what makes them happy, what makes them laugh, what makes them sad, and content is feeding into that, and content generators are looking into that. So we ended up creating what I call a huge tsunami, and us in the industry we're with our little buckets trying to figure out how we're going to cope with this demand. And eventually, yes, I think there will be a hybrid system because we need the bandwidth. There's a bandwidth issue. So we're going to need every megahertz, every hertz out there. Whether it's terrestrial, allocated for terrestrial use, space, etc., we're going to need it to supply this huge tsunami that is coming. And indeed, the satellite industry has quickly adapted to the mobility issue, especially in the house with Sat IP right now. It's not very common here in the region, but in Europe, and this is why you see satellite in general growing up, even linear channels growing as versus OTT, which is also growing by leaps and bounds, but they're not. It doesn't seem like it's eroding from linear TV via satellite, and definitely all industries providing these services will have to collaborate and work together, because there's backhauling issues that satellite can solve, where cable, etc. There's remote areas. So yes, absolutely, I see there will be total harmony. I think we have so much demand out there that there's going to be room for everybody.
But do you see this a threat from operators, for example, moving into your traditional business with more reach over 4G networks?
It's funny. I think we all had that anxiety in the satellite industry in the beginning when these networks started developing on the ground, 3G, 4G, etc. But the evidence on the ground is showing that even with the deployment of fiber to the home, even with all this great technology to the point where the next generation is going to hit a theoretical limit of how much information you can squeeze into a megahertz. Okay. I mean, this is how advanced it. Even with all of this, we see evidence in Europe, for instance, that the number of linear channels are increasing. We see, for instance, that in 2010 in Europe there was about 750 million using satellite, DTH satellite. Now it's north of 95 million, so it's growing. It's not eroding, like I said. And yes, it's surprising, but for us it's a very pleasant surprise, and there's room for everybody to grow with these hybrid systems.
Fantastic, thank you. I'd like to take the opinion of the vendors from this side. Maybe Tony, you can shed some light about how you're dealing with this enablement from.
Well, we have seen the growth of the mobile broadband. For instance, mobile broadband is growing at a rate of at least 30% CAGR rate per annum, and we believe that certainly that the ARPU will not able to grow at the same rate. Because of that, it's not easy for operator to maintain their profits. Why the broadband demand is much higher than what they can expect from the customer for the revenue.
Yes.
And because of that, we believe that operators have to change their business model a little bit. They have to get some share of revenue from the content. Either they cooperate with OTT, or they can, charge so-called like a two-side business model that they can get at advertising to support their contents. Otherwise, it won't be easy for them to maintain their profitability. So operator, as of today, I think I would say they have two choices. One is to become a pipe provider, to keep their operating costs low so that they still can maintain profitabilities. And some operators, they believe that they are more smart. They should able to become a content provider. And we have seen operators in this region, including STC, Etisalat, and Ooredoo. They all become part of the content provider. Same thing in China. China Telecom, China Telecom, and China Mobile. They also get involved in the TV business. Like China Telecom alone, just in a province of Sichuan, they were able to capture about 7 million subscribers in just 2 years of launching the IPTV service.
Thank you. Karim, basically, Deutsche Telekom is trying to do very novel ways of enabling new content services. I believe maybe you can tell us a little bit about the BMW taking content in a different direction as well to cars, to transportation.
Yeah, a couple, of different experiences coming from our European market. So we're delivering video services in some 7, 8 countries across Europe in different technologies, a bit reflecting also what Sami was mentioning. We're using satellite, we're using IPTV, cable, OTTs, depending on the different markets. But one example, you're referring to what we did this year, in fact, was enabling a video-on-demand service, subscription-based for BMW owners, in fact. So with kids in the back, the kids can use their tablets, bring their own device, and then it's managed by the connected drive system from BMW. It's a subscription-based, including videos as well as audiobooks. So coming up with different packages, very specific for holidays, so for trips basically in the car, 2 weeks or months subscription-based. And it's picking up nicely with car owners who are having kids and going on the... So it's a different ways of video on the go enablement, specific for this use case.
Very interesting. Just before I move to Dr. Bassem, I just want to do a quote, actually, which is quite funny, probably to break a little bit the seriousness of this. This is from our Consumer Labs report. We've interviewed a sample in the US. One guy came with saying, and this is about the user-generated content, which is now beefing up these networks at the rate of probably 9% annually. And this gentleman said, "My wife fixed our iPad and our dishwasher by watching YouTube instructional videos. If a nuclear reactor started leaking, she would go to YouTube and then volunteer to fix it." And that's the effect of this user-generated content. It's becoming, this appealing and this. And in that respect, the question is to Dr. Bassem. Maybe you can give us a little bit about your experience having started from YouTube and moved to live TV, and how do you see the content in the next 2 to 3 years evolving to generate, an increasing amount of interest and monetize?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm the only one on this panel who's not a CEO or a VP, so I feel quite poor. So thank you very much for having me. I feel extremely underprivileged and out of my league. And I'm sure that they have a lot, much better than I can ever say about their experience in telecom. But I can talk about how we started 2010. It's very interesting that 5 years later, all of this is like the talk of the hour. 2010, I remember, there was absolutely no original content, no Arabic original content on YouTube. Absolutely nothing, none. They were just like random videos, maybe people combining montages of like cats and people falling on their faces, but there was no organized way to produce content in the Arab world. We started 2010, and we were going on a project, and then at that time I was a heart surgeon, so even that I was out of my league, and I was preparing my visa papers to go to Cleveland, and nothing tells how desperate you are to leave your country other than being excited to go to Cleveland. And by the time before that, the revolution started, and then 2011, January 2011, it was an explosion of ideas, of talent, and we started to do something that is relatable to everybody else. Now, the difference between a YouTube content and television content, that television is leaning backward experience. But YouTube or internet, it's a leaning forward experience. You have to actually connect with that person. So I don't know why I was chosen by my friends to be there, but they felt that like if I speak to people, people would listen, because it's a very personal experience. I'm talking to this monitor is talking to me. It's not spectacular, it's not big like the television. And I just made fun of what's happening in the media at that time. And I expected maybe 10,000 views, and just a couple of months later I had 5 million. And then every single channel wanted to hire us, but they wanted to hire us as fillers. Oh, we like those 5 minutes. Why don't you just like put it as fillers? And we didn't want that. We wanted to, if we are going to change media, we are going to change the quality of content. So what we did is that we have tailored our content to television by keeping the quality of internet. It's going to be fast, it's going to be personal, it's going to be close to the recipient. And then when we made another move into live theater, we still kept that digital part very strong. So we were the highest viewed on television and the highest viewed on the internet.
Interesting.
And this is why I don't see a conflict between linear television and internet. So until this day, you find, for example, Jimmy Fallon, he's the most viewed late night show in America, 7 million views each night. And yet he is the highest viewed on the internet. He has his, everything is the new, because there are different audience. It's, not everybody has 15 devices to check their email and Facebook and check their on the Instagram. There are people still who like to watch television or watch it on TV or whatever. But this is why I don't see the content. But what should happen in content, especially in the Arab world, a lot of the Arab world content, and I'm talking specifically about where I come from, and many of the countries here are still locked in the 80s. You can't have talk shows that go on for 3 hours. It's unheard of. It's unheard of. I mean, I have a friend of mine who actually, she's an American, and she said like, and he's a famous talk show host. And said like, is this a religious program? It's like, why? This is a political program. It's like, there's nowhere in the world you can speak 3 hours to people unless they're preaching. And this is why they are still locked in that. You cannot just have people sitting on studios. It's absolutely boring. It's not, and this is why you are losing the millennials. You're actually losing everybody. I mean, the only people that I know are the people above the age of 80 because they have nothing else to do. But and so this is why it is. You have to actually put more dynamics into the content, and it could be good for everything. It could be good for the internet, could be good for the television, because of that you have like a big company like Coca-Cola. Last Ramadan in Egypt, they made the decision like, we are not, like we have Ramadan, the big spending season, our Thanksgiving, our Christmas, our Super Bowl, everybody spending advertising. They said like, we are not going to spend a single dime on content, on advertising on television, and they are going to put it all on the internet. This was a mind change, because you cannot continue with that. So if satellites or linear television is losing, it's not because digital is taking over, it's because they are still locked in 2-3 decades backwards. And we have actually, and the way it is evolving now, you talk about YouTube, for example. Everybody is now waking up for this fact. So now Facebook, if you notice, if you put something from YouTube, a link from YouTube on Facebook, it's not going to be viewed as big or as much as if you actually embedded natively on Facebook. That's why you have AG Plus English has become in 1 month one of the most viewed videos in the entire world, because they just like they forgot about they didn't care about YouTube. I mean, how many of us actually go to YouTube? We just like go through our feed through Facebook. Very rarely that you have to actually look to something on YouTube. And this, so Facebook woke up. Twitter, I was in Twitter in Cannes, in the MIPCOM, and they said like, they're putting their own services. Now you can actually upload 10 minutes video on Twitter. That was not the case before. You only had Vines.
Interesting.
So everybody is doing it, and it is very interesting to see that all of these people are evolving, and linear television is still locked in the past. And this is the way to go ahead.
Very, very interesting perspective. But let me ask you one question: is I'm sure you made money on this, and
Not me, it's the people who produce it.
okay. Well,
As I
okay.
said, I'm very poor.
Okay.
It's the only jacket that I own.
Briefly, how do you think this experience can be?
All right, so I'll give you an example. The company that did the البرنامج, they did another experience called Ziyama Hebtek, Broadcast Your Time.
Yes.
It was a very simple idea. They went to the streets of Egypt, 10 cities, 10 governments, and they had like a little kiosk on wheels. They went everywhere, and they asked people to go into this kiosk, this soundproof kiosk, to go there, there's the camera, and to sing. And they went there, thousands of people applied. Thousands of people went in. They just like went in. It's like Arab Idol, but in the streets.
Very interesting.
And they have generated millions of views. What they did is they sold it to sponsors. They had sponsors sponsoring the kiosk, sponsoring the videos itself, sponsoring the fact that they will get the winners and make a music video at the end with them. This is one way. There's also the monetization of the ads itself on it. So there's so many ways to do it. Sponsoring is just like a simple, you go to Crest, to Coca-Cola, to Shipsy and say like, we have this project, would you like to sponsor? And you will get the sponsor. It's very easy to monetize.
Very interesting.
And it's only one idea you can monetize on mobiles. There's so many ways, and yeah, that's one thing.
Perfect insight. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Sami, you're the, I would like to call you the experimental innovationalist at Do, with all the novel ideas. My question, and I hope we can answer very specifically given the limitation of time. Are we going to see Do owning its own content or generating its own content, perhaps?
I think it's a great question to our CEO, but I think there's a natural, I would say, progression. Operators who are extremely advanced have been in the field of TV and video, have started off simply by hosting or rebroadcasting somebody else's content. One of them is here. I mean, PCCW started like this, but then I think with time there was a natural progression into first co-producing or investing with the acquisition of the rights, so that you have the rights or first right to use.
Yes.
And then automatically growing into full content production. In PCCW's case, for example, they have their own studios. They have around 11 studios, and they produce their own content in different areas, from entertainment to sports to others. So I think we cannot exclude such a move, but it starts very slow. Starts by basically getting first understanding the content that is consumed by subscribers. This is what we do on a daily basis. We have reports, what's being watched, what's being consumed, from VOD to live channels. Then using this data to give them back more of what they're interested in seeing. And then there's monetization aspects of this type of viewing, which obviously advertisers would be interested in paying for. So we bring the advertisers in and say, what do you want to know? We have a lot of data. I mean, it's an IPTV system, so from the volume up button, I can tell you how many times it's pressed during an hour. So we have a lot of data, but we need to work on monetizing it in a proper manner, ensuring the complete customer, anonymity in this case. So yes, the answer is it's definitely on the radar, being evaluated, but I think it's too early right now to get into the discussion of content creation, but more into the proper content consumption. I mean, we have a lot more channels, for example, challenges right now, like sports channel rights in the region, which we have only one major provider for, and premium content, which is now we're seeing more new players coming in. So that's the market is going to evolve slowly, and I think, like Bassem was saying, user-generated content is not tackled on the large screen the way it is on the digital screen. Right. It is now king of content on if you have the right formula, you have the right mixture, like Bassem's Al-Barnamig was. You're able to create some wonderful content which people will pay you millions to be part of. But on the large screen, this transition is not tricky. Not everybody is able to transition purely from digital into large screen, maintaining that same base and interest, but also expanding it. That's something I think which was quite unique to see in Basim's capabilities.
Thank you. I'm just going to steer one or two more Karim, I'll let you comment, and then I want to steer one more question. Then we move potentially to the audience, just for the brevity of time. Please, Karim.
Just maybe a quick comment on summaries. In fact, in some of our markets, we are also creating some content, in fact. So in most cases, we are acting as a platform and integrating different content providers from Netflix and others. But like in places like Romania, Greece, I mean, where we ended up creating some linear TV content, I mean, sport, news, depending on the market.
Nice.
So depending on the maturity of the market and the competitiveness, I mean, they were
That's a
coming up
possibility.
with. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, very briefly to Sami and to Ben about the regulatory, what would you aspire from the regulator to facilitate these? I mean, regulators are probably the absent party in this discussion, but potentially how would you seek regulatory help, Ben, to promote content on your network?
Allowing for mobile payments to be easier. I think there's a whole other world that does impact this, which is the ability for telcos to charge a lot on their mobile carrier billing and mobile banking. And in Saudi, there's restrictions on that stop the regulators there. That would allow people to therefore make some money out of it, and therefore people would get interested in doing it. In regards to the content, the comments were said about content earlier, and the type of content, and why aren't people in this region doing something more interesting on free-to-air television? I don't think it's just regulators. I think it's conservative nature. And I think the people on YouTube and others are being more daring and more youth and more experimental. But that's obviously much more compelling than 90% of the television channels that we're seeing on free-to-air around here. So it would be good to see some of that come across into television and into the paid environment.
Very interesting. Sami?
The satellite industry in general answers to two regulators, not many. I mean, there's the ITU, which is a global regulator, and then there's a local, and it's usually specific to when you want to uplink content. Now, what we would like to see regulators do on the ground, so the gentlemen here on the panel deal with regulators, much more regulators than we do, and a bit more complex because it's from space it's much easier to regulate. We would like to see, specifically here in the Middle East, regulators issuing licenses, broadcasting licenses, much more. There's still a lot of restrictions to broadcast from certain countries, and we believe it should be open as long as it maintains the appropriate standard and as long as it maintains the appropriate, or you stay within the confines of international law.
Yes.
Then you should be able to broadcast.
Okay. Tony, I'll conclude with you. Final comments on regulatory.
I think regulation is very important. As you can see that in China, October 11th, Taobao, they produce about 160 billion of e-commerce.
Wow.
And 75% was performed on the mobile phone. So without the support of the mobile payment on mobile phone, definitely it's not easy to do any e-commerce.
Interesting.
So Ben is very correct. I support him.
Very interesting. Thank you, and I would like to open the floor for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would like to conclude this. Thanks to our panelists, and we wish you a happy dinner. Thank you.